Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Wednesday, the 25th of June, all day. You join myself and Mr. Michael Brown for the morning blast, where we jumpstart your trading day with a review of yesterday, a preview of today, hopefully add a bit of value, maybe put a smile on your face, etc., etc. But before we do, I'll get the legals out the way. So as usual, nothing discussed in this space session constitute trading or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ, myself, Ryan Paisley, or indeed Mr. Michael Brown. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Good morning to you, Ryan. Good morning, everyone. A very happy Wednesday, halfway through the week.
Yeah, it feels like it should be Friday already. Well, to be fair, it thought that yesterday, but yeah, exactly that. Um, Shall I get the Iranian headline? It's a singular today because
I was going to say, we're sort of scraping the barrel on
yeah.
geopolitical news,
Well,
mercifully, I think.
this stick with the current formula though. So just in case, for anyone that's been living under a rock, etc., just one update on Iran today, and that's, well, to be fair, it looks like the presidential F-bomb has had some clout, because so far the ceasefire between Iran and Israel seems to be holding. Obviously, by the time you listen to this, if you're listening to this in like 10 minutes time, that might not be the case. But as of right now, at what was it, 08:31 UK time, London time, a day after both nations signalled an end to their air war, the ceasefire appears stable, marking a potential de-escalation in regional tensions. So some good news for the risk front. Yeah, and thankfully that's the only Iranian headline I've got currently.
Well, thank goodness for that. I must admit, I do think Trump spoke for a lot of us when he was
Yeah.
talking about the Middle East yesterday. I don't think
Um,
I could have put it better myself.
Well, do you know what? Because I was kindly invited onto the Ninja Trading Live or Ninja Trader Live show yesterday. And I was told, Ryan, we know you like a swear, but obviously this is quite a serious show. But I thought, you know what? As I'm quoting a sitting president, I'm going to allow myself to do it. So I was allowed to drop the F-bomb, because I'm quoting a sitting president. So yeah, everyone's a winner.
I bet you were smiling like a Cheshire cat after
Oh,
doing
you have no idea. Well, you do.
that.
You have
Yeah,
exactly all the
worryingly.
idea. But anyway, what's been occurring, my dear friend?
Yes, let's crack on. We can somewhat resume normal service because, as you rightly alluded to, Ryan, it was another solid day in terms of risk
Yeah.
appetite yesterday as the ceasefire in the Middle East held and markets continued to unwind that geopolitical risk premium that had been priced in over the last week or so. A solid rally seen on Wall Street with the S&P closing about 1% higher last night. The Nasdaq 100 gaining 1.5%, with the Nasdaq rallying to a fresh record close for the first
Woohoo.
time since February. The S&P 500 is within inches of its own record, which, if he's listening this morning, means I'm soon going to have to buy Ryan Littlestone lunch, as
Sorry.
as I've lost a bet on that one, or very close to losing a bet on that one. We also saw that unwind of geopolitical risk premium play out elsewhere as well, with gold trading about 1.5% lower, testing $3,300 an ounce to the downside, but holding north of the 50-day moving average. Of course, the big mover on the day was crude, with both Brent and WTI down by about 5% apiece, and that in turn has seen markets reprice inflation expectations lower, has seen treasuries rally by about 5 basis points from 2 to 30 year yesterday. And in the foreign exchange complex, just lastly, the dollar broadly soft against most peers. The dollar index down by about 0.5% and lingering below the 98 handle this morning. Consequently, we see cable trading north of 136 and the euro poking its head north
Go on
of
the cable dog.
116 once more. Both of those trading at year to date and in fact multi-year highs this morning.
Go on.
In terms of other catalysts and news flow from yesterday, actually, just one thing on the geopolitical front. Trump was talking about China yesterday. He said that China can
China.
now continue to buy oil from Iran, which caused a bit of a heart attack in the Treasury because they suddenly went, does that mean that sanctions have gone? No, it doesn't. I think it's just the president saying the quiet bit out loud. Trump was
Yeah,
also
exactly
saying
that.
that he hopes China will purchase plenty of US oil too. Certainly won't be holding my breath on that one. It will be like the soybean purchases they were meant to make back in 2018, and I think they ended up purchasing.
90% done, mate.
Yeah, I think
They're still 90%
they
done.
probably bought one bean at most, rather than anything else. Speaking of trade, there were a few headlines on that front yesterday. White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett was reported as saying that we will see, I quote, a sequence of trade deals announced around the 4th of July. July, supposedly after Congress passes the One Big Beautiful Bill. I would like to remind you at this point that Kevin Hassett has said for the last 6 weeks that the US is close to announcing a trade deal, and thus far they have only announced one. So do perhaps take those remarks with a rather large pinch of salt. Also on the trade front, Japan's Akazawa, he is planning to go to the US as soon as Thursday. This is according to Kyodo, and of course comes after reports that Japan were postponing or pulling out
Yeah.
of a scheduled meeting as a result of some disagreements over defence spending. So we'll see how that one pans out.
If I'm right, and forgive me if I'm not, but I believe this is actually the 7th talks between Japan and the US on the trade and tariffs.
I think that's about right.
Yeah, there you go. I see, I do listen. I think it might be you that told me.
God help us, blind leading the blind, isn't it? The other headline on the trade front that we had yesterday came by Bloomberg citing sources in the European Union, with the EU reportedly warning that even if the US administration, the Trump administration, only imposed the baseline 10% levy, the 10% baseline tariff, that could still spur retaliatory tariffs on US imports, including potentially Boeing aircraft. This is quite frankly nonsense from the EU. We all know that the 10% reciprocal levy is probably going to be included in every single trade deal, and if the EU want to put tariffs of their own in as a result of that, all they are going to succeed in doing is shooting themselves in the foot. Nevertheless, on a slightly more positive note, the negotiations have reportedly gained speed, with the EU Commission saying that they are doing everything possible to reach a solution that benefits both sides before the 9th of July. Again, I shan't be holding my breath for that deal to be agreed. There are effectively, of course, two negotiations going on in the EU. Firstly, the 27 of them trying to negotiate with each other, and then the Commission trying to negotiate with the US. So no surprise that they're making a complete pig's ear of things. Away from trade, yesterday we did have plenty of central bank speakers. Of course, Fed Chair Powell on Capitol Hill for the first day of 2 days of congressional testimony. Powell very much sticking to the script of the press conference that he outlined last week, noting that policy is well positioned, allowing the Fed to wait for clarity before considering further rate moves. Once again, describing both the economy and the labour market as being in a solid position, while also noting that inflation has eased but remained somewhat above the Fed's goal. Powell was also probed by some of the lawmakers on why the Fed is not cutting, despite inflation being towards 2%. Powell noting that the reason the Fed are not cutting is because of not only their forecast, but also other forecasts for and what he called a meaningful increase in inflation this year. The reason I mention that is because it implies that one of the things the Fed need to see or want to see in order to deliver a rate cut is a forecast for disinflation. And that is clearly not in place given the SEP that we had last Wednesday, this time last week. Also, we had plenty of other Fed speakers yesterday, including Bostic, Hammack, Williams and Kashkari, all of them espousing the wait-and-see approach to monetary policy, and very much running against the lines that have been used by the likes of Governor Waller and Governor Bowman in recent days, who have both been in favour of a July rate cut. Money markets pricing about a 17% chance of that July rate cut, which really isn't too much above where it was this time last week. As for economic data yesterday, we had some better than expected sentiment figures out of Germany, with the business climate gauge rising to 88.4 in June, up from the prior 87.5. The current assessment and expectations metrics also rose on a month-on-month basis. Across the pond, inflation came in bang in line with expectations in Canada in May, with CPI rising by 1.7% on a year-on-year basis. Money markets did marginally pair their bets on a BOC cut in July. That's now seen as about a 1 in 3 chance compared to the 4 in 10 chance that we had yesterday. And from the United States, consumer confidence plunged in the month of June, with the Conference Board's index at 93, down from the prior 98 and well below the 99.8 consensus. But Reuters made an absolute mess of that headline because they said it came in at 5, which is clearly incorrect. As for other, honestly, the Reuters intern is, well, I don't think they've got a job anymore, let's put it that way. As for Henners, as for As for other catalysts yesterday, we did have a 2-year Treasury sale in the United States, which stopped through the when issued yield by 0.1 basis points, taken down relatively well, and that of course comes ahead of a 5-year sale later on today and a 7-year sale on Thursday. Other notable headlines for the crypto folk out there: Poly Market. They are apparently raising $200 million at a valuation of $1 billion. They're also 50 million of that, is coming from Peter Thiel's Founders Fund. This is according to sources cited by the information. Personally, I just see Poly Market as a glorified bookmakers, and the fact that the US haven't had Paddy Power and Coral on the streets for the last 20 years means they're all getting excited about it.
Yeah,
But
well, yeah,
maybe I'm wrong on that one.
I would kind of correct you and say it's more of a Betfair, given that it's an exchange and
Yeah,
there's high
perhaps.
stakes. But yeah, it's pretty much first mover advantage in to a certain extent for the US, right? We've also got
Mm.
Kalshi, fair play to Polymarket. Obviously, they really exploded over the presidential election, and there was a lot of people saying, this will be one shot wonder. As soon as the presidential election's over, there's no one's going to be trading on Polymarket. But the volumes that they're doing are increasing quite dramatically. So I get what you're saying, and yes, I agree with you. But credit where it's due.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I've got to be honest, there are some slightly strange markets on
Oh my
there,
God,
such as
this
will
is
Jesus return in
yeah. So
2025?
there's some absolutely bonkers markets on there. But yeah, I think if people want to punt on it, then I guess give them a market, right?
Well, exactly that. And there's probably some arbitrage opportunities
Oh
somewhere
yeah,
on there
absolutely.
if you look deep enough. Anyway, away from that, in European banking news, the Spanish government, they cleared BBVA's bid to buy Sabadell yesterday, but they put in place some quite strict conditions on the bid, saying that the two banks, if they are to merge, will need to keep their operations separate for at least 3 years and possibly up to 5 years, with a decision on that full legal merger only to come at the end of that 5-year period. So it's highly likely now that BBVA turn around and say, we're not interested
Yeah,
anymore,
right.
because the whole point of integrating the two banks and buying one is to engineer a whole host of cost savings. And you're not going to get those cost savings from integration for another half a decade. You're not really going to be keen to get
No.
the deal done. So not exactly the Spanish government playing a blinder there. Last but by no means least from me this morning, news on the Morning Blast's new favourite person, Brad Jacobs, aka me, in about 30 years. QXO, they are offering about $2 billion worth of shares. They have priced that offering at $22.25 a share. That was massively oversubscribed by all accounts. And of course, this is an effort from Brad Jacobs to consolidate the building industry
Yeah.
in the United States and perhaps pay for a hair transplant too.
Very good, very good. Thank you very much for that, Mr. Michael Brown. So just before we go back to you, I'll read out some of choice headlines from the overnight news roundup, which is obviously put together by Zach Eisman. He doesn't seem to be on the call at the moment. But if you don't already, do follow, subscribe to our
Disgraceful.
Substack.
Where
It
is
is.
he?
He's probably booking a
Probably
holiday,
still
let's be
in
honest.
bed.
Yeah. So on the trade front, obviously Michael did mention about the Trump team nears trade deals with Japan, South Korea, Vietnam. Fox Business News reports progress on, quote, multiple trade agreements, though negotiations with India face challenges. Again, don't count your chickens until they've hatched. US-Mexico trade talks focus on steel quotas. Negotiations aim to reduce tariffs on a set volume of Mexican steel imports, addressing concerns of US manufacturers. That's according to Bloomberg. Regarding the EU presses China on rare earth magnets shortages, as we know that China have been withholding exports on those. The EU demands resolution before next month's leaders' meeting, highlighting supply chain vulnerabilities. UK to buy US F-35A jets to strengthen ties with Trump. Prime Minister Starmer's order of 12 nuclear-capable jets signals alignment with US priorities. That's according to Bloomberg.
This, oh, sorry, I was
Go
just
on.
saying on that, this, from the commentary I've read this morning, this seems to have, gone down very poorly with folk who are quite well informed on military matters.
Yes, I noticed that.
Essentially the argument is that this is very expensive for something we probably don't need, and 12, although it sounds like a big number, is probably not enough
Yeah,
to, given the maintenance requirements and
yeah,
all the rest
exactly
of it.
that. You've always
So
got
feels a bit half-baked.
Yeah, you've always got some out of service, etc. Exactly like you alluded to. We have no fucking clue about this, but what wiser heads are kind of hinting that this is a bad deal, so I'll take their word for it.
Yes.
Chinese exports to UK surged despite global tariffs. Chinese shipments hit multi-year highs, suggesting China is finding markets unaffected by Trump's trade barriers. In macro news, US foreign direct investment dropped sharply. FDI fell to $52.8 billion in Q1 from $79.9 billion in Q4 2024, driven by uncertainty over Trump's tariff plans. That's gone to Reuters. Fed Schmidt, time to assess tariff impacts before rate cuts. The 2025 voter emphasizes studying tariff effects on price and growth. Well, yeah, I would appreciate them doing a bit of studying before they make a decision, but yeah, good one.
I mean, that's your job, mate, isn't
Yeah,
it?
exactly. Bond market braces for $1 trillion with a T. Treasury surge. Strategists predict a flood of short-end treasuries in H2, pending debt ceiling resolutions. That's according to Reuters. From Bloomberg, we've got traders bet on falling 10-year treasury yields, option wagers rise as Fed dovishness and Mid-East tensions point to yields hitting April lows. BOJ, Bank of Japan's Tamura, signals decisive rate hikes despite US tariff uncertainty. Inflation overshooting forecast may prompt BOJ bold action from them. China's Premier Li, confident in growth transition. He emphasizes a shift to consumer-driven growth to sustain rapid economic expansion. That's according to Reuters. Finally, on the macro front, Israel-Iran conflict revives China's interest in Siberia pipeline. The stalled power of Siberia 2 gas project with Russia is gaining momentum, according to the Wall Street Journal. In geopolitical news, sans Iran, China vows response to Taiwan's tech blacklist. Taiwan's restrictions on Chinese firms like Huawei aimed at curbing AI development is prompting Beijing's retaliation threat. That's according to Bloomberg. Spain, they're defiant on NATO defense spending. Economy minister in Spain says that Spain faces no repercussions for missing NATO's 5% GDP target. Sticking with the EU related, EU is urged to bolster global role amid Trump tensions. Former Italian PM Renzi calls for stronger EU presence as EU relations strain. That's gone to CNBC. And finally, for me, just some equity headlines. Tesla's Europe sales plummets. New car sales dropped 27.9% in May, despite a regional EV sales boom. So, the continent is selling more EVs, but Tesla aren't selling anywhere near that many, with the revised Model Y failing to gain traction. Boeing, they've been blamed for the 737 MAX door plug failure. Federal investigators cite inadequate training and oversight for last year's incident. We obviously remember that when the door just popped off whilst it was flying, just what you want. FedEx, they forecast weak profits amid trade uncertainty. Soft parcel demand and global trade concerns drag on the company's outlook.
They failed to deliver.
Oh, you stop it. US banking mergers set to surge. Executives predict a wave of mergers driven by regulatory shifts and tech investment needs. That's called TFT. You've mentioned Polymarket, so I'll skip that. So finally from me, before we go back to you, Samsung's $17 billion Texas fab is on track for 2027. The semiconductor plant ramps up hiring to secure orders from major US tech firms. And that's it from me. Back to you in the studio.
Very good. Thank you, Ryan. In
Thank
terms of
you.
today, then, it is actually a very light economic docket for the
Pub?
day ahead. Oh, well, yeah, maybe. Certainly, in Europe, there is really absolutely nothing going on this morning. And in fact, today's only notable data release comes from the United States this afternoon with the May new home sales data, where sales are seen having risen by 693,000 in May compared to the 743,000 that we saw in the month of June. Other bits and bobs to pay attention to today, as I alluded to earlier, we do have a 5-year Treasury sale at 6 o'clock London time this evening, $70 billion being sold off there. In terms of speakers, Fed Chair Powell is on Capitol Hill for the second day of his semi-annual testimony. Day 2 is nearly always a repeat of what he said on
Do you
day
know what?
1. So
I was talking to someone yesterday about it. One day it won't be the same as day one, but no one will be
yeah,
listening anyway.
exactly. But I don't think that day will be today. So I think
No,
we can
no.
probably ignore Powell on Capitol Hill. We also have the Fed's Goolsbee. He'll be speaking
Oh,
around about
brilliant.
1 o'clock this afternoon, but he speaks every day. So I think we can probably ignore that as well. The BOE Deputy Governor Claire Lombardelli is also making remarks at some stage during the day. And in terms of corporate earnings, there are really no notable earnings before the market open today. But after the close, we hear from Jefferies and we also hear from Micron, of course, the semiconductor name. Quite a punchy implied move there, actually. Up or down 8% is
Ooh,
priced by options on Micron stock after the close. And of course, continued focus on any geopolitical events in the
yes.
Middle East. Trade headlines as well, and the NATO summit, which is underway in the Netherlands. So we may get some headlines on defence and just Trump stuff in general from that. But for the
Could
time
this be
being,
fair?
that's all from me.
Trump could say anything, so yeah, just keep your ear to the ground. Um,
Yeah,
Cool. Well, Michael, thank you as always. I know I don't say this often enough, but you are, let's be honest, fucking brilliant at this on this show. So I really, really do appreciate you, my dear friend. There must be a
thank you,
couple
mate.
of pints coming your way. Listeners, thank you as always for tuning in. We really do appreciate you, especially our newer listeners. We've seen a few of those coming and going. Yeah, whatever you're doing today, keep it tight, stay safe, and much love. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Indeed. Bye for now.